In today's Stellaris video, we're going to rank the top 5 meta Stellaris builds by power level. They're going to be ranked by their power levels at year 30, 50, and 70, and the average of these values will be their overall ranking. Do keep in mind that similar builds are clumped together, like every single build that starts with Overtuned is going to be under the Overtuned umbrella, and every single Shroud Forged build will be under the Shroud Forged umbrella, etc., etc., etc. You get it. Also, for every single build, I will have a video linked in the description on my channel on how to play them in more detail. Some of them are a little bit outdated at this point, however, I'll be working on updating them in the near future. Anyways, thanks for watching, and let's get into the list. And the first build on our list is Shroud Forged. What makes Shroud Forged so good is a very, very early ascension via psionics and events, so you don't need to finish 3 tradition trees before you ascend, giving you access to very high pop efficiency right away, while Constructo Bots and Rapid Replicator can really help with our pop assembly speed and building speed respectively. And this is overall a very good origin. In addition, if you're willing to do exploits or bugs in the sense that if you run with negative economy in some resources, you can get a ridiculous level of pop efficiency. Also, you don't need to take bioships. I would actually recommend alloy ships still. However, you can also run this with bioships. It's also not bad. I've tried both before. So here we are at year 28. Unlike some of the other builds, this was one of the first builds I had tested, and I've definitely gotten quite a bit better at it since, so these year 30 numbers could be improved. And the main thing that I want to talk about here is the Shroud Towers. So these are a cool building you get, or the Shroud Observatories, sorry, which boost the base output of your researchers per building you build. This is, of course, ridiculous. If we go ahead and enable all of these buildings, we go ahead and take a look at the ridiculous amount of tech we're making. Let's go ahead and quickly pass the month. And yeah, you can see we're at well over 1.5k tech now. And if you're willing to run a negative zero economy, also looks like we're getting access to one of our Shroud Shapers here. We'll just pick a random leader because it doesn't matter here. Is if we're willing to go with a negative zero economy and wait for these buildings to complete. Okay, now with these buildings completed, you can see that we're almost at 3,000 tech, not quite 2,500 tech. However, we're losing a lot of zero. The exploity thing comes to the fact that despite having negative zero, there's no negative effects to your economy, so you can be negative 2,000 zero for all the game cares per month, and you will still be making a very, very happy amount of tech with no consequences at all. By exploiting this, if you want to start exploiting it from as early as like year 1 or 2, you can get up to like 1,000 tech at year 10 and just then focus more on your military economy, probably get up to at least 300 to 400 alloys per month instead of what we have here, because you don't have to dedicate as many jobs towards tech, right? And then you can really break the game open in that way. Anyhow, even if you don't do that, and you just run as much zero as you can normally afford, and you get a nice Paragon or something that can help you produce some zero, then even still you can get some decent year 30 numbers. But overall, without exploits, this would probably be like an S- year 30 power level. Yeah, we definitely didn't militarize much in this run. However, where this build, in my opinion, gets really good and into the solid S tier is the year 50 numbers. Take a look at this. 600 alloys, 7,000 tech. Of course, you could drop down to some less ridiculous amount of tech, like maybe like 4,000, and get up to 1,000 alloys, which is basically Stellaris creative mode. You can really, at that point, build whatever you want, and let's go ahead and just take a look at the year 90 numbers just for fun. And here we are at year 93. This is basically Stellaris creative mode at this point. 5,000 tech, 35,000 research. However, this still isn't even the strongest build in this video. It is the weakest, in fact, which is pretty ridiculous. The main downside is just the pop assembly doesn't get very good until you get Fallen Empire assembly buildings. Like, even take a look at this planet here. It's just half replication hub and multiple Fallen Empire production hubs on it, and we're still only at 38 pop assembly, which just kind of results in you're kind of lacking pops across your entire empire unless you dedicate multiple entire machine worlds to just pop assembly, which at some point gets tedious to play. So yeah, overall, this for me is still 5th, but very, very strong. late game, and you also will need a lot of naval capacity, which can be a bit of a problem. The next build on my list is Virtual. Yes, Virtual falls all the way down to 4th. Virtual has a lot of problems these days, in my opinion, in the sense that it just never scales to the same late game power levels as the other builds do. Um, and in exchange, you get a relatively powerful year 30 to 50, but I couldn't even be sure if it is the most powerful year 30 to 50 in the game, um, as you'll always struggle to produce something unless you do, Megacorp trade packs with other players and that kind of thing. So this is the build we went with. I think no, I think we ended up going with this one. Death Cult Parliamentary System. This was the fastest Unity rush that I managed to do personally, just by building temples. And let's go ahead and take a look at the in-game. The reason why you want Void Forged is Void Forged gives 1.5 times the jobs that regular districts do, and resource consolidation was nerfed so heavily that it's really difficult to be powerful in this time that Virtual is supposed to be powerful, which is like your 30 to 50-ish. So that was kind of a no-go for me. So the early game of Virtual is a very classic Unity rush. You just build temples everywhere, basically on every district you can, whilst doing enough to maintain your basic industrial resources, and hopefully you can save up some alloys to start building a habitat whenever you can. As you can see, we don't even have a second colony yet. We're just rushing Unity on our main habitat. One trick that helps this build feel a little bit better is put a Megacorp in your galaxy, force them to spawn, give them trading posts and franchising, and when you make a commercial pack with them, you'll get some trade. And in addition, the efficiency of the traders on your planet is going to go up drastically, which is going to help after we ascend. And here we have a snapshot of this build at year 41, 5k tech, 990 alloys. The reason why Virtual falls down to 4th is my year 30 numbers are genuinely not impressive. I personally had like 200 alloys and like 2k tech, which is definitely not something that a lot of other builds can't do these days. However, by year 40, I believe this is probably an unmatched power level by most other builds, 1,000 alloys and 5,000 tech. The reason, however, I don't rank this higher is this is as high as you're going to get without Cosmogenesis buildings, right? Basically, most of our planets are near maxed or maxed out straight up. Like, yeah, there's a few upgrades here left and right, but we're not going to be able to sustain it with our current setup. So basically, the only way to get better than this is to literally start having Fallen Empire buildings, and then you'll probably get up to like 20,000 tech and like 3,000, 4,000 alloys per month. But by the time you have that, most other builds will be stronger, and they'll only continue to pull away as they can build more colonies, while on Virtual, you're stuck preferably with 3 to 5 colonies, and other builds don't have that restriction. So, yeah, I would say Virtual these days, it just has the problem that it doesn't scale that well into the late game, and these are not untouchable numbers from other builds in the game these days. So, anyhow, that being said, like, not a lot of builds could have Riddle Escorts. I started building Riddle Escorts at year 30, not very many of them, but yeah, not many builds could have Riddle Escorts and that kind of thing at this time. So there is definitely a period of the time, in the late year 30s that I would say Virtual is not matched by many other builds in the game. However, the many weaknesses, the fact that Unity rushing leaves you super vulnerable in the first years of the game, and then after the Unity rush, you don't power up until you can sort out your basic resources and that kind of thing, is a bit of a pain, and you have to build 3 habitats as well. So there's definitely some issues there. And the next build is one of my favorite builds to play, and that is Synthetic Fertility. Once again, all of these builds, I have a build guide to some extent on my channel, and Synthetic Fertility is just amazing for tech, and it has the ability to militarize for year 30 as well, which is why it gets above Virtual. But the main reason it's above Virtual is not the year 30 and 40 levels, which are definitely lower than Virtual in a lot of ways. However, it's once you get past year 50, Synth Fertility will completely pull away, as you have unlimited number of planets and basically unlimited pops as well, and higher pop efficiency. So that being said, Memorialist, Dark Consortium, Fanatic Materialist. Fanatic Materialist is here to maximize the amount of tech that we are getting from our monument building. And tech is really the name of the game in the early game for Synth Fertility. So let's go ahead and go in-game and take a look at what this build looks like. Also, here's the rest of my trades. You keep in mind, we're only keeping these traits for a little bit. Here we are at year 16. This is when I finished my ascension. As you can see, we fully ascended into synthetics, and also I really want to point this out is there's a way to run your pops with synth fertility where if you don't do this, none of the things I said about the build will be true. It won't be that strong at all. Essentially what it is you want 3 species templates. The first one, you don't want that many of these pops, so for example, I only have 600 of them, and that is one with the recycled trait, dark matter engines, durable, biometric assembly, and exotic gases, exotic fuel consumption. This pop will hopefully be the roboticist in your empire, giving you the most roboticist efficiency possible. The next build is, or the next template is going to be the pop which you have the most of in your empire. And this is just every job efficiency trait you can think of: shielded components, dark matter engines, durable, exotic fuel consumption, and just 2 traits to balance that out: custom made and high bandwidth. And basically, we're going to have these species as our default species, and then the assemble pop. This pop has monoform, adaptive frames, this is a must, and mass produced, and then 3 negative traits to balance it out, including luxurious, which is pretty funny. And essentially how this works is the game looks at this pop and goes, let's assemble this pop because it has adaptive frames and has the highest assembly score. Then this pop will be assimilated via this species integration setting into our default species, and then when we need more of these, we'll set this as the default and then go back to our general. So with this setup, basically, our pops are assembled. The assembly me pops are the ones that are assembled with those massive pop assembly bonuses. The roboticists that we're working are, hopefully, this doesn't always happen as the game is finicky, those super efficient assembly pops, and then the rest of our pops are just those generally efficient pops. And with that, essentially, you get a species with like the equivalent of like 25 positive trait picks or something ridiculous, right? It's the equivalent of having pops with all of those traits at once. And none of the downsides, right? Like you don't have the upkeep of biometric assembly on all your pops. Keep in mind it's a little bit finicky to get working, but it's one of the core aspects to any modularity build that makes it so strong. I only ended up playing this synth fertility build up to year 38, but as you can see, we're already up to 3,000 tech, 500 alloys, and as you convert these worlds into arcology projects, you can imagine how this will just get to completely ridiculous numbers, right? 15 plus pop assembly on every planet. That is even higher when you have the agenda active, which we currently don't. And a very, very high level of pop efficiency. I don't know the exact level of pop efficiency, but yeah, we're over 2x pop efficiency on most of our jobs, right? So, like, you just get some ridiculous bonuses. And as you get accumulopluses and scale up in general, you'll eventually go infinite for sure. So I would say, yeah, this build would probably overtake Virtual at like year 45, and they would never look back, which is very, very cool, I'd say. And right, I think our year 30 alloy numbers were like 240, 250. Go check the video. I have a full playthrough of this exact empire actually. And yeah, at this point, it'd play very similarly to Shroud Forged, except with extra pop growth, it'd be even easier, and it would scale even harder. So just imagine what we had with Shroud Forged, except even stronger. Yeah, that's how ridiculous synth fertility is. And the next build on my list is Knights of the Toxic God. This is probably my favorite build to play. It is incredibly fun and also incredibly broken. Do keep in mind that every single build on this list is separated by a relatively small amount these days, and they have different upsides and downsides. However, Knights is the weakest by far year 30 build. You can't easily defend yourself. However, if left alone, you will scale to where basically no other non-exploit build can catch up to you. There are some, like for example, I didn't mention this with Virtual, but you can go infinite with Virtual by not completing the tradition tree and running civilian-based builds with exponential scaling. I also will have a video of that linked down in the description on my channel. However, I don't really consider that a regular build because it's just kind of an exploit that I expect to be patched at some point, I think. Anyhow, back to Knights. Functional architecture is a near must. Parliamentary system for some early game unity. 3 ethics, just make sure none of them are spiritualist. This is very important. And then I just use the big brain trait because we're going to get most of our resources from specialists and above. So yeah, we're going to work the minimal amount of workers we possibly can with this build, and you'll see how as we get into the in-game. So here we are at year 30. As you can see, no military at all. 2000 tech, however, is decent. And we've unlocked our third tradition tree already. But yeah, like nothing special about year 30 knights, right? It's pretty weak. Like this is probably like a C plus level of strength. Like if you make any build and build only tech, you'd get close to this, maybe like 1500 tech. However, that's not enough, right? We need more. Like we need alloys or some other resource to make up for this. But the thing with knights is they just keep scaling. The base output is increased on your habitat, which is going to result in some pretty funny numbers. Here we are at year 52. Take a look at this. We're now at 11,000 tech, right? 700 alloys. So we can now basically defend ourselves. Like there'll be builds which are stronger at year 50. This is like an S tier year 50, I would say. But 11,000 tech is not matchable by most builds. Maybe virtual could be close. But that would be the peak of virtual tech where we're just going to keep going, right? This habitat here, it can get 50% larger, right? So it's not even done, and it's already producing 10,000 tech. Another thing is now that we're a megacorp, we have a very good basic economy because with Organic Syndicate from Bioascension, Worker Cooperative, we just get an insane amount of trade, right? So now each pop we have produces a base amount of trade, plus we get some more trade from the following very cool synergies. So the auto-curating vault is a rarely used tech, but when you put it on your knight's habitat, now your knights produce tech. So now your knights produce basic resources, unity, tech. Like there's just naval cap. They produce everything. They literally produce every resource in the game except for alloys and consumer goods, which is genuinely hilarious. And you can see they don't even use very much of those in the first place either. So with that being said, let's just show you what like a year 90 knights build looks like because it's just hilarious. So it turns out my save was from year 300. But yeah, take a look at this. We've gone infinite. We've given up on using our resources. Literally, like there's just too many. 79,000 tech, 8,000 alloys, negative consumer goods. Funnily enough, the consumer goods definitely are a bit of a struggle to make enough of those. But yeah. Anyhow, we're just farming Cosmogenesis, we're farming repeatables, and we have a near infinite power fleet. We could really do whatever we want. We're just limited by build speed, and like we have 500,000 alloys saved up, right? So yeah, that is Knights of the Toxic God. I think it has the strongest non-exploit late game in my opinion. So yeah, one of the funnest builds out there. And finally, Overtuned. Given that it's not been here yet, you guys could probably assume that this would be the number one build. And yes, I have a number one. Now, Overtuned is, funnily enough, probably not the strongest build at any stage of the game, but it is so good at every stage of the game, year 30, 50, 70, and so flexible. There are so many ways you can play it. I'm playing with Egalitarian Fanatic Spiritualist, but you can play it with bioships, you can play it with alloy ships, you can play it with fauna ships. Fauna ships are amazing with Overtuned, and I believe it's like the nucleic judiciary government you get from Overtuned. And it is just generally one of the fastest and most reliable ascensions in the game, giving you a lot of time to prepare for year 30. And it is one of the strongest ascensions in the game on top of that. Here's the traits I'm using. They're pretty flexible, to be honest, right? Like you can really pick a variety of things that work. And let's go ahead and get into the in-game. So here we are at year 30 of my in-game run. You can see we're already at over 1,000 trade, an insanely stable basic economy, and 250 naval cap. I'm not sure I had any other build which had this level of naval cap this early into the game. They are Mauler fleets, which I've heard have downsides to them, but I'm not a fleet expert, don't claim to be. But yeah, as you can see, we're fully ascended. We're halfway through Supremacy already. And at this point, we're just building up as many fleets as we can, right? Do keep in mind that with bioships, you're half dependent on food, half dependent on alloys, right? So you're kind of using both to build up our fleets. Why are we only making 60 food? We should definitely be making more than 60 food. Did I load up the wrong build? No, this looks right. I guess we just haven't had the chance to build up our agri-world enough. Yeah, we're building the food processing center right now. But yeah, at just year 30, we have 1 point something K tech, not the craziest amount. right? But like, look at the stability of this basic economy. We could afford a lot more. Okay, yeah, now we're up to 1,000 food. I don't know what hadn't updated there. I really don't, to be honest. And yeah, 1,000 food, so more than enough to build any fleets we need. Here we are at year 51. We now have 1,500 naval capacity, right? What other build I showed in this video has 1,500 naval capacity? 500 alloys isn't insane. I don't know why the food never updates at the beginning, by the way. I have to run time for a month before my food updates to its actual number. Oh, why is it still negative? No, seriously, like, what is going on here? Oh, there we go. Now it realized, oh, we should have food. I don't know why that is the way it is. It looks like the bonuses to our food production don't apply right away, which are definitely funny. But yeah, 5,000 tech, not the most insane number, right? Knights had way more. Oh, Virtual had more earlier. But what other build could have 1,500 naval capacity at this point in time? Do keep in mind I am using the Megacorp trade tech, right? But it's something that it's pretty easy to set up either in single player and even easier to set up in multiplayer. So yeah, this is very awesome. And then just for fun, let's go look at the late game. Also, I just want to mention this is a cloning run, so it also shows that cloning and purity are often quite interchangeable, and I accidentally loaded year 31. Yeah, here we are at year 89. I believe we swapped to stingers at this point, although we probably still have some other funny ships. But yeah, as you can see, it's not like full creative mode the same way Knights is, but you're obviously going to be stronger than any other AI, and you'll be able to put up competitive fleets as well, just with the fact that you have a crazy amount of alloys and food. I would say the main downside of this build is food does not scale vertically very well. And what I mean by this is you're going to need more food planets if you want more food, because this is about as good as a food planet can get, which is about 15,000 food. Whereas, say, other builds that work with alloys or some shit, you can get a much taller alloy world than you can get a tall food world, because food is a basic world with no advanced world type. So you will need more planets. You could obviously go habitats, or you could just, take your neighbors at this point, because, you're producing an infinite amount of resources and fleets, and just have more planets for food that way. But yeah, Overtuned, not the most insane late game, but I do believe I was incredibly unlucky in this run with finding the bioregeneration institutes very late, so these numbers definitely could be better. Like, we could be at like 30k tech at year 89, which is nothing to scoff at, and still definitely one of the strongest builds in the game, whilst maintaining the largest military of any build in this video so far, maybe except for late game Knights, because, well, late game Knights are completely ridiculous. But yeah, more detailed builds, then, this has just been like a big overview, will be linked in the description. Some are outdated, and I'm going to be working on updating them to newer versions of these build guides. But yeah, do keep in mind I'm just a guy with limited time doing this for fun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, as this video was one of the more time-consuming ones to make, just, testing out these builds and making sure that I, in my opinion, got the order in at least a decent rankings. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.